everyone, and welcome back to the English Grammar Chat podcast. I'm Yvonne, your host, and today we're talking about an essential tense in English, the past simple tense. This tense is used to talk about things that happened in the past. We'll cover two important parts of it. 1. The verb to be, was, were, how to use it in positive sentences, negatives, and questions. 2. Other verbs in the past, how we used did for questions and didn't for negatives, plus the difference between regular and irregular verbs. Joining me, as always, is my good friend Jack. Hey, Jack!
Hey, Yvonne. This sounds like a big topic, but I'm excited to break it down and make it simple.
We'll start with was and were, and then move on to other verbs in the past. So let's get started. All right, let's begin with was and were, the past forms of the verb to be. Use was with I, he, she, it. Use were with you, we, they. Here are some examples. I was at the park yesterday. She was very happy last night. It was cold this morning. They were at the concert last Saturday. We were in London last summer.
So if I want to say something was true in the past, I just use was or were with the subject?
Exactly. Now let's move on to negative sentences. To make a negative sentence, we just add not after was or were. The long forms are was not and were not, and the short forms are wasn't and weren't. Here are some examples. Long forms. I was not at the party last night. She was not at school on Monday. It was not hot yesterday. They were not ready for the test. We were not late this morning. Short forms. I wasn't at the party last night. She wasn't at school on Monday. It wasn't hot yesterday. They weren't ready for the test. We weren't late this morning.
So when I want to say something wasn't true in the past, I just add wasn't or weren't. Wow, it's easier than I thought. Okay, so we've just discussed positive and negative statements. Now it's time for questions. How do we make questions with was and were?
For questions, we move was or were to the beginning of the sentence. For example, was she at the meeting? Was it cold last night? Were they happy with the results? Were you in class yesterday?
So if I want to ask about the past, I just switch the order. Was were comes first, right?
Exactly. It's simple. Now let's move on to other past tense verbs. In the past simple, verbs change to talk about past actions. There are regular verbs which add ed and irregular verbs which have completely different past forms. Let's start with regular verbs. I walked to school yesterday. She played football last Saturday. They watched a movie last night. See, we simply add ed or d to the base verb. Walk changes into walked, play changes into played, watch changes into watched. Now let's take a look at some examples with irregular verbs. I went to the store this morning. Go changes into went. He ate pizza for dinner. Eat changes into ate. They saw a beautiful sunset. See changes into saw. Irregular verbs don't follow the ed rule. They change completely, which is why we call them irregular verbs.
How can I tell if a verb is regular or irregular? Do I add ed or d, or does it have a special form?
Great question, Jack. Unfortunately, there's no simple rule to tell if a verb is regular or irregular. You just have to memorize the irregular ones. Regular verbs are easy because they follow the ed rule, like walk, walked, play, played. But irregular verbs don't follow a set pattern. Some completely change, go, went, see, saw, while others stay the same, cut, put. For a full list of irregular verbs, along with their correct pronunciation, you can check out our website, www.petrayvonneenglish.com. A good way to learn them is by practicing and using verb lists. Many English learners rely on irregular verb charts, and over time, you'll remember them naturally.
All right, great. Thanks, Yvonne. Now we should take a look at negative sentences, right?
That's right. Let's dive into it. To make negative sentences in the past simple, we use did not, the long form, or didn't, the short form. We start the sentence with the subject, then add didn't, followed by the base form of the verb, and then the rest of the sentence. For example, she didn't dance at the concert. I didn't watch TV last night. She didn't eat breakfast this morning. They didn't study for the exam.
So we use didn't, and the verb stays in its base form, right? So if I say I didn't went to work yesterday, that's incorrect. I should say I didn't go to work yesterday.
Exactly, Jack. Remember, when you use didn't, you must use the base form of the verb. And don't forget, we use didn't for all persons. There's no difference whether we use she, he, or it, like in the present simple. Here, all the persons are the same.
Got it. So no matter if it's I, she, he, or they, I always use didn't and the base form of the verb. That makes sense now.
Exactly, Jack. Now that you've got the hang of the negatives, let's move on to forming questions in the past simple. In questions, we use did first, followed by the subject, and then the base form of the verb. Let's look at some examples. Did you go to the gym yesterday? Did she call you last night? Did they visit their grandparents? Did he drive that car on Monday? Did the cat sleep well?
I see. So we start with did, then the subject and the base form of the verb. It's pretty simple.
All right, let's quickly recap what we've covered today about the past simple tense. We use it to talk about actions that happened in the past. Use was with I, he, she, it. Use were with you, we, they. I was at the park yesterday. To make negative sentences, we use wasn't and weren't. I wasn't at the party last night. For questions, just move was or were to the start. Example, was she at the meeting? Now, let's move on to other past tense verbs. In the past simple, regular verbs add ed to talk about past actions, like I walked to school. On the other hand, irregular verbs change completely, such as I went to the store. To make negative sentences, we use didn't followed by the base form of the verb, like I didn't go to work yesterday. For questions, we use did at the beginning of the sentence followed by the base form of the verb, as in, did you go to the gym yesterday? So, this is the full recap of everything we've learned today.
Thanks for breaking that down so clearly. It really helps to see the difference between regular and irregular verbs, and how to form negatives in questions. I think I'm ready to practice now.
You're welcome, Jack. I'm glad it helped. You're definitely ready to practice now. Thanks so much for listening to our podcast, everyone. If you want to learn and practice English grammar more, head over to our website, www.petrayvonneenglish.com, where you'll find plenty of exercises to boost your grammar skills and more. We also have audiobooks and tons of resources to help you improve your English. Stay tuned, and we'll see you in the next episode of the English Grammar Chat podcast.